Hi and welcome back to Property Insights. On today's video we're going to be talking about emergency home cover and if it's worth it. So if you're a landlord and you've got a property, you want to take out a policy to cover you for things like the boiler breaking down or any electrical issues, or in fact any issues at all to do with maintenance in the property, is it worthwhile taking out an insurance policy? Welcome back to Property Insight. My name is Mark Ashworth.
I'm Neil Harding.
So, landlord cover, what does it actually mean and what does it cover and is it worth it, I guess, is what we really want to know.
Yeah, so what is it and what does it mean? So emergency landlord cover, all of the things that are insured, I think if I was describing it in a nutshell, I'd say things that go wrong, which means that suddenly, unexpectedly, the property is not safe and secure.
Right.
Maybe not even habitable. So things that definitely aren't covered by that insurance would be there's a leaky tap, or if the toilet doesn't work anymore and it's not the only toilet in the house because there's another toilet that you can use, then you can still go to the toilet and therefore it's not an emergency. But if it is the only toilet in the house, then clearly that's a major problem. So that's the way to think of it.
What does this, if you have this insurance to cover this stuff, what's the alternative? I guess the alternative is just to hire your own maintenance guy to go around in the event of an emergency. And the downside to that is that maintenance guy or engineer going to be available at the time when that emergency takes place? So does this policy give the tenant the ability to be able to call a number to then call out the relevant appropriate help?
Yeah, absolutely. So why would you want this? I mean, I have a letting agent for vast majority of my properties, and actually if there is an emergency they call them, so I'm not on 24/7 call, which I quite like. If you haven't got a letting agent and you self-manage, then you might feel as though to some extent you're on a 24/7 hotline. If you're on holiday, the last thing you want is to receive a phone call whilst you're trying to sunbathe on the beach from a tenant that has an emergency that needs dealing with that day. So I think for people that particularly self-manage, this might be quite useful. That's why you might want to do it. Some of these insurance policies provide a service where not only is there a 24/7 claim line and helpline, but also the tenant can call that number directly and almost cut you out of the loop completely, which is quite convenient.
I think that would add quite a lot of value if it meant that the tenant could easily contact somebody and have a conversation and get some help straight away. I guess the argument there is what the tenant would feel is an emergency as opposed to whether it is actually covered by the emergency cover. Because if the tenant is ringing up for something that isn't covered, then obviously there's going to be some kind of hoops to jump through for the tenant that ultimately then will either come back to you, or if you do have the property managed, to the agency. In my experience, anything which is an insurance policy, they'll do every single thing they possibly can to wriggle out of whatever it is that they're covering. So I think you need to be absolutely clear to the tenant what it covered you for and under what circumstances they should call that number.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes sense if you're going to take a policy out like this to leave a copy of the policy with the tenant so that it's in an easy to reach place and they understand, talk them through the policy so they understand what it is that's insured and what isn't insured. Let's go through some of the things that typically are insured with emergency home cover.
Yeah, so if you've got an emergency home cover policy which is fairly comprehensive, normally when you take the policy out there'll be different levels. So you might have up to sort of 3 or 4 different levels, and at this level it will cover this much. Normally gives you a page where there's kind of check boxes and it will say this is included, this isn't. But typically, if you've got a very fully comprehensive cover, it will cover you for pretty much everything, won't it?
Yeah, we'll go through a list of stuff here. So boiler breakdown, that's quite commonly one, therefore you have no central heating. So, no central heating is clearly a problem and an emergency. It will can cover the entire central heating system, plumbing, pipe work, burst pipes, which is, you're probably thinking more like flooding burst pipes, not slow drip leak burst pipes. Home electrics, if you haven't got electric supply from the main electric supply in your house, then that would be regarded as an emergency. If you've lost your door keys,
Okay.
and you can't therefore either get into your property or you can't safely secure your property because you haven't got your keys anymore, then that would be considered an emergency and a locksmith would be sent. Pest control. So what's quite interesting there, I've read quite a few policies around this, but pest control, I found that typically what is insured are hornets, wasps, mice and rats.
Okay.
That are regarded as pests, and pretty much everything else isn't. So bed bugs, not regarded as an emergency, and bees, not regarded as a pest, and
can't
therefore
touch
an
bees.
emergency. You can't. Yeah. So they're actually most of the advice means, deal with those things separately. Drainage and roof damage is an interesting one. So I found quite a few insurance policies that did include roof damage, and quite a lot that didn't. But essentially, if you've got, storm damage, let's say, and tiles start flying off the roof, it could be quite a lot of water coming through, then a lot of policies will insure that, and they'll cover the roof with tarpaulin or something and make it secure. So they're the sorts of things that are included as an emergency cover.
I think and again, we will reiterate that home emergency cover is an insurance policy. And I think that it depends on the company that's providing the insurance and who they work with that will give you either a good or bad experience. And sometimes you don't know what that experience is going to be like until you actually have an emergency and have to use the service. So let's say it costs you 200 quid for the year. There may be years that go by where you never ever tap into the service at all because there's never an emergency. And it only really becomes apparent how good it is when you use it. So
Absolutely.
It's down to your attitude to risk, in my view, and also whether you want a hands-off approach to any emergency and how likely that is to happen. I have to say, I've never taken out such a policy with any of my properties, and I've never, the worst I've had is a leaky toilet or a leaky tap or a shower that doesn't work or the boiler stops working, and I've got enough of a range of tradespeople that I can contact that can go in a reasonable amount of time. And actually, I don't really think any of the issues that I've had have been emergencies. You can cope for 2 or 3 days with a certain, maybe not in the winter if the boiler breaks down and you need to get someone there pretty quick. If you've got good relationships with tradespeople already, or you've got a good letting agent, they're going to have relationships with tradespeople that can help out on that. So to me, I don't really think it's not something that interests me particularly. I did take an insurance policy out recently with a company that deals with boiler cover, and I have to say I didn't have a particularly good experience with them. It's fairly likely that I won't renew because you're dealing with more than one person. You're dealing with the insurer and the policy, and they're booking in a service which is then dealt with by an independent tradesperson or gas engineer or whoever it may be that they then send out. So you're just adding another layer of people to the list. If I just contacted my gas engineer and said, can you go and do a gas safety certificate on this property, it's almost, if you've got a good relationship, an easier process.
If you've got a portfolio of properties and you're living within, say, half an hour drive away, and particularly if you self-manage and you've got those great relationships with local trades, the argument becomes more and more diluted to have it, doesn't it? I'm looking at it at the moment for a property that I've just bought that is a 2-hour drive away from me, and I'm wondering whether this is an option to go for. I don't know local tradesmen. I don't have relationships built. I haven't got a power team set up there, but I bought a property that was a great deal, and I'm thinking, well, actually, maybe I'll go a letting agent route, but maybe actually as a sort of first step, I might try this and see how I get on. It's not like it's a decision I can't change my mind on in a year or even 6 months. So I might try this, but like you, I've never taken a policy for any of my properties of this type either. So I'm still undecided at the moment. Just to sort of finish off then, so annual cost of these policies ranges between about £150 to £300 per annum. Things to look out for are, and what particularly influences that premium is your excess. So sometimes you can have a zero excess, and sometimes a £50 or maybe a £99 excess, which is based on a per claim basis. Other things to look out for is, can you have unlimited claims for a year? Some of these policies are capped to 3 claims a year, which I find a bit strange, because if you've got emergency, like, you don't know how many emergencies you're going to have in a year. Maybe you wouldn't expect to have as many as 3, but I just feel like if you're going to take this policy, you want it for ease, and you don't want to be thinking, oh, I've had 2 emergencies this year, so
I better not have another one.
Better not have another emergency. Better plan my emergencies better.
Yeah.
So that's a bit strange. And then also the level of cover. So they pretty much all include parts and materials, but sometimes the policy is up to £500 and sometimes it's up to £1,000 of parts and materials. So that's something to think about as well.
So we hope that you found that useful. As usual, please like, share and subscribe so that you can get more content like this. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.